You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rosanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is a communications trainer and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share it with friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
Alper, today I have a couple things on my mind, but before we get to that, I wanted to mention that in this new schedule that we have, I used to remember like it was routine. There was muscle memory. I knew how to start the podcast, and now I have to think, wait, how do I start this thing?
Well, since this is
Huh?
a cooking show, you can just start by naming out ingredients of the dish
Yeah.
we're going to make.
Okay. So our topic for today is the three most common mistakes, three or four actually, the three most common mistakes that people make in presentations.
Yeah.
And so let's dive right in. So why don't you start out? Tell me what is the first one that you want to talk about today?
The first one that I want to talk about is actually the one maybe that I see the most, which is the presenter takes up the stage, or if it is an online meeting, he or she takes up the screen sharing and then starts trying to educate the listeners. And when I say educate, I'm talking about a monologue in which information is dispensed
Okay.
incessantly.
Okay.
And when this happens, it's almost impossible for the audience to stay connected to the person.
Yeah.
And when I asked in the trainings, for example, how people experience this and what they do at the time, they tell me that especially if they are online presentations, they just, I mean, some even go far enough to minimize the screen and keep the audio rolling.
Yeah.
But they tell me that what they usually do is they just put the presentation on the side and just keep on with their own things. And can you imagine you're this person presenting, let's say in this meeting, and there are, I don't know, maybe tens of people in front of you, half of them, and that might even be optimistic, by the way. Half of them has you down and working on their Excels or some other things. This is what happens when we try to educate the audience and give them all the information about the topic that we're talking about.
So wait, let me stop you here about this word educate the audience. So when people are trying to educate the audience, I imagine that if you're trying to educate the audience, you're probably going to be telling them a lot of stuff that they already know. So you're going to turn them off because they're thinking, what do you think I am, stupid? So what do you mean when you use this phrase, educate the audience? Are you talking about like people saying that things that the people already know, or are things that they don't know yet but don't really need to know?
I think it will be more close to the second one when I use the word educate. Let's say you're a potential client and this is a sales call, a sales meeting, and I'm going to present to you my company or my products or my services, whatever.
Okay.
By educating, what I mean is I start talking about me, my company, my product, and without asking first how much of it you're willing to hear, I dump all this information about it onto you. I go to details. I go to levels of depth that you might not be willing to hear at that time.
Okay.
That's what I mean by educating. Because when I do that, I'm missing, I think, the first rule, which is trying to understand the needs of the audience. What is it that this person wants to take out of this meeting that we're having?
Okay.
And in most cases, it's not all the product description or the features or the bells and whistles or whatever it is that you're selling. Again, with the example of the sales presentation. That's what I mean by educating the audience.
Okay. And and I can totally understand this impulse. I mean, you want to show the world that you know what you're talking about, so you end up puking out everything that's in your brain. But I imagine that could not go very well. So if we know ahead of time that the results are going to be bad, why are people doing this anyway?
It's a good question. I think part of it is because that's how it has been done for such a long time that we think it's the right way to go, or maybe the normal way to go.
Okay.
And we don't stop to question whether I think most of us are prone to go into a presentation mode, let's say, and just start talking.
Okay.
Okay, I have 28 slides. I start with this, I continue with that, I finish up with this. I think we fail to observe maybe the signs from the audience that they might be disconnected, and we just keep on talking and talking.
Okay. And are people doing this because they're nervous and they're just too nervous to measure their audience's response, or are they want to prove that they know more than anybody else about this? They want to prove how smart they are. What's motivating them to make this mistake?
I think nervousness might come into picture here. And for sure, I was one of those people, by the way. I mean, when I was nervous, what I did
Oh,
was, okay, I'm just going to start talking.
okay.
Just keep talking. Don't
Yeah.
stop. Just keep talking. And of course, I mean, I myself did that so many times in my life. So
Uh-huh.
definitely nervousness may be playing a key role here.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it's too much about, okay, I am the educator here. I'm going to speak. They're going to listen. Well, certainly there have been cases of that too, by the way, especially with lectern speeches from the stage.
Yeah.
But mostly, you're right. I think you're right about that. It is connected to being nervous and maybe pursuing the idea that let me just get this over with. So
Yeah.
the faster I spoke, the more things I say, I'm going to come closer to the end faster and it'll be over.
Okay, so if one of the primary motivators of this is this that people are nervous and they're in their nervousness, they're puking out a bunch of irrelevant detail. So how do people get around this? What are some of the ways that you can get around this?
I think the first way would be something that we mentioned in a previous episode, which was the three critical questions.
Mm,
And the first one was, why should the audience care about my
okay,
message? What is it that
okay.
is important for them? The second is, what exactly am I telling them in
Mm,
simple terms, not in complicated chunks of information, but in very simple terms? What exactly is it that I'm telling them?
okay.
Like the most important thing that they need to hear from me. And the third is answering the question, what are some of the things that I want them to do after the presentation?
Okay, okay.
And usually we may be prone to thinking that, well, at the end of the presentation, I want them to buy the product or
Uh,
sign the contract or get the deal. Those are more often than not ideal goals for the end of the presentation. I think a better outcome would be just to lay out the next steps for our encounter. It could be maybe another meeting, another call, maybe another presentation to some higher ups in the organization. I don't know.
uh,
But usually the sale, the signing of the contract, etc., usually when we think that those are the final goals to be achieved during the
okay.
presentation, we may be more prone to even feeling more nervous, by the way. I mean, performance anxiety can kick in and we may think they don't look like they're going to sign the contract, so maybe I'm failing this presentation. And it
Yeah.
just doesn't mean that.
Okay. And let's back up a second here before we move on to the second thing. So let's back up a second. You mentioned a few minutes ago I can't remember, was it three or four questions that people should be asking themselves before the presentation? And you
Mhm.
were talking about how asking yourself these questions is a good antidote against, puking out everything you know. Tell
Mhm.
me again, what were those three questions?
Well, actually, it might be better to frame them through the perspective of the audience. So,
Okay.
as a presenter, I need to ask myself the three critical questions, which I'm almost sure the audience will be asking. And
Yeah.
when I'm speaking to them, and the first one is, why should I listen to this?
Okay.
Why is it important for me? So
Yeah.
I need to be able to identify the answer to that question and laid out on the ground on the table during the beginning stages of my presentation.
Okay.
The second is that the second question that they will probably ask is, what exactly are you telling me? And in
Mm.
this regard, I cannot ask for a lot of brain work from the audience to try to understand, to try to decipher the message that I'm trying to tell them. So it needs
Okay.
to be extremely clear and simple to understand. And the third question is, okay, what should I do with this information? Again,
Mm.
from the audience's perspective, I need to leave them at the end of the presentation. I need to leave them with clear, actionable items without the guarantees that they are going to be taken, of course. I mean, there are no guarantees, but at
Okay.
least I need to be able to tell them, okay, this was the presentation, this was the topic, and these are the next steps that we're envisioning. So can we agree on taking them or something like that?
Okay. And it seems to me that these three questions, it would be really important to build them into your muscle memory, because
Hmm.
once you're nervous, you're about to walk on the stage in a few minutes, that is not the time to remember these things. It's not the time to be thinking through these things because, you're nervous, so you're not going to be able to think about anything.
Hmm.
So you really need to build these into muscle memory. so that asking these three questions becomes like almost an automatic activity for you.
Yes.
What would you say to that?
Yeah, and it should. And
Okay.
I think, I mean, it's not only the presentations that I think these three questions should become muscle memory. It's all sorts of interactions, I think, especially in the office,
Hmm.
especially in the business world. It would be, I think, ideal if they became muscle memory in all parts of our lives.
Uh,
I mean, how many times have you found yourself in a conversation where the other person was just going on and on and on about something that was important to him, but maybe not so important to you?
oh, I find myself in that situation often. In fact, I'm probably guilty of that too. I'm sure that I've bored many of people over the punch bowl at a party.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think we should pass a UN resolution to make it standard practice for conversations throughout the world, but it should
Uh,
definitely be standard practice in the business world.
yeah, I agree. Okay, so point number two, the second most common mistake that you see people making. What's
Mhm.
that one?
Actually, I think we're going to leave it at 2 points because of time constraints, but the second one is pretty important. So let's dig into that.
Okay, sure, go for it.
And I think it's a horse that we have beaten so many times before, but I don't know. Is there a saying you can never beat a horse too much, a dead horse too much? I don't know if it
Well,
exists.
I don't know if a saying like that exists. I don't even know if I would use it if it existed, but I I
Well, I
get your
just made
point.
it
I
up.
understand what you're saying.
I
Oh,
just
that's a
made it
nice one.
up.
That's a good
And
one.
I'll take credit for that. You can never beat a dead horse too much.
Too
Okay.
much, yeah.
And that's about not making enough preparation, not doing
Uh,
enough work before the presentation to make sure that it runs smoothly.
okay.
Of course, I'm not talking about a situation in which nothing should go wrong, but I'm talking about even small things that if they go wrong, they could maybe disconnect the audience from you and give them the impression that maybe you weren't so prepared for this after all. Maybe
Mm.
you didn't put too much importance on into this presentation after all. And
Uh,
that is an image that I would not want to create in any
mm.
audience member.
Yeah, because then they would probably the audience members would probably feel disrespected.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, of course, everybody's time is valuable,
Uh,
and I agree that things can go wrong.
okay.
And I don't have, any negative emotions or feelings towards someone who is presenting and something goes wrong and they're fumbling with it. But if I sense that it was easily avoidable just by putting some extra attention to the preparation phase,
Yeah.
that's when I start feeling not insulted, but like, come on, man, this should not be happening. Like
True.
you put a video on your slide and it's not working.
Yeah.
It should not be happening at this day and age. If
Yeah,
it were the
true.
90s, okay, maybe I would be accepting that. But come on, now it should
Yeah.
not be happening. So make
You've
sure.
had 20 years to work out this problem.
Exactly,
So yeah.
exactly. And believe it or not, it still happens, not only because
Yeah.
of people's faults, but for technological glitches. I mean, for any reason, you may go up there and your presentation may not work, which is understandable.
True.
But I think there is a huge difference between unforeseeable circumstances and foreseeable circumstances.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and at this day and age, we have taken care of most of those foreseeable circumstances, if not all,
Yeah.
of course, but most of them.
Yeah.
So take the extra time to prepare, and not just for technological glitches, by the way, but for the overall experience.
Uh,
Like make your research, do your research about the audience to the best of your capabilities, of course, and the information available. And do practice your opening, do practice your connections, do practice your ending, etc., etc. Like I said, I don't think it should be a perfect performance without any hiccups whatsoever.
uh,
I definitely think it shouldn't be way too polished to the point of making it feel artificial.
okay.
But I'm talking about the most common mishaps that can go around the presentation. I think we need to take enough time to prepare, to practice, to rehearse, so that they don't come up in our next presentation.
So if let's do a little review here. The first mistake that you talked about was feeling like you needed to educate your audience, right? That was the
Yes.
first mistake. The second mistake is not rehearsing.
Mhm.
And you mentioned the time constraint, but let's give these people what they came for. So let's give them the third one,
Okay.
even if we have to run a little over. So what's the third one that's on your mind?
Well, actually, the third one is slightly connected to the second one.
Uh,
When something happens that you were not expecting, foreseeable or unforeseeable, do not apologize.
do not apologize.
Do
Tell
not
me more. What do
apologize.
you mean? What
And
do you mean?
I do not mean that in an arrogant way. I do not
Okay,
mean that in a way that makes you look like an entitled.
sure.
Yeah, you get the point.
Sure.
But I'm talking about you started your presentation, you advanced
Uh,
your slide, and the video didn't work.
uh-huh.
Okay, it's not ideal, but I think one way of making it worse would be to say something like, I'm sorry, I apologize. The video should be working, but it's not. So let me try this, let me try that. I'm sorry that I'm taking your time, etc., etc.
Mm,
If
mm,
the
mm.
video is not working, just move on. Do not
Let,
spend like 2 minutes or 3 minutes trying to figure out what's going on. Just move on.
mo-
I mean, you had your
when,
chance. Move on.
when you say move on, do you mean like move on to the next
Move
slide
on
or
to the
move
next
on to
slide.
what?
Move on to the next slide. Yes.
Huh, okay. What if the like the video that you were going to show, what if you think it was really crucial and you don't want to just move on?
Well, at that point, I think as a presenter, you need to make a snap judgment
Uh-huh.
and decide whether it is that crucial to risk losing the
Mm,
audience's attention. Because if you stop the presentation, if you say, I'm sorry, there seems to be a technical difficulty here. Let me take 2 minutes to fix that. I would assume good luck recovering that attention. So if you think the video is that crucial to take that risk,
uh-huh.
okay, go ahead with it. But then I would be questioning if it is that crucial a video, what happened for you not to make sure that it's going to work in the first place?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to run something by you and you
Hmm.
tell me what you think. As we all know, Matt hates all things technology. So
Yes.
uh, when I see a video, I'm like, get rid of that video and learn how to say it or put it into still images so that you reduce the necessity that your technology works.
Hmm.
So my natural prejudice, I guess, would be to say, okay, if there's a video, get rid of it.
Okay.
And so that this problem never pops up. So what do you think about that? My solution to it would be, well, get rid of the video before you even walk into the room.
Well, that's one way of looking at it.
Uh-huh.
I respect that. It's making sure that you're not going to have video problems.
Okay.
But if you believe as a presenter that this video is important,
Mm-hmm.
I need to show it,
Mm-hmm.
and I cannot skip it, like I cannot omit it from the presentation, I cannot remove it from my slides. Okay, there are ways of confirming things. There are
Okay.
ways of increasing the decreasing, let's say, not increasing, but decreasing the probability that something will go wrong with it,
Mm-hmm.
which is, it could be like download it, put it on your computer, embed it onto the
Mm.
PowerPoint file itself so that if
Okay.
the file, as long as the file is opening, the video is going to play. You don't
Yeah,
need
yeah.
connection, you don't need external codecs or whatever software that is necessary. But
Uh-huh.
make sure that it works. Try it on multiple platforms, try it on multiple
True.
computers. Given that you're telling me that it's an important video.
Uh-huh. Okay.
If not, then of course I would question the need for including it in the presentation in the first place.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about 20-minute videos, by the way. I'm just maybe talking about 10-second, 15-second videos. I'm not even recommending including a video of 1 minute. I think it's too long.
Wait, back up a second. Hold the presses. Stop the presses. So you're saying do not put 20-minute videos in your presentation. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't think the press cares too much about what I'm going to say, so they can keep on working. But
Uh-huh.
yes, I believe anything above 10 seconds, 15 seconds is too much for a
Okay.
presentation.
Okay.
And then you need to make a crucial judgment to whether to include that video or not. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, we're talking too much about videos, but I think it's one of those situations in which you can really force people to take out their phones and start checking their WhatsApp messages
Yeah,
if you hit
absolutely.
them with a 5-minute video. I don't think
Yeah,
anybody's going to watch that.
because I think of me personally when I'm watching a presentation and somebody offers up a 5-minute video or a long video.
Hmm.
I think, oh, wow, especially if the lights are out. I think, oh, wow, it's a great time to go to sleep. And I'll just ask someone later or hope that, maybe the speaker banged on the point enough so that I understand the point anyway.
Good luck
I
with
see
that.
a long video as a great opportunity to catch up on some winks.
Yeah. So don't
Okay.
do that.
Yeah. So we went over the 3 mistakes. Anything else that you want to cover before we wrap up for the day?
No, but I'm sure we'll find further mistakes to avoid and come up with new episodes in the future.
Okay. And before we realized that we were going to be pressed for time, we were talking before the podcast about a potential 4th bonus. So we don't have time for that bonus today, but I want to hear about that bonus on a future episode.
Yeah, let's
Are you
keep
cool
that
with
in
that?
mind.
Okay. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk to you later.
Great.
And Alper, I will see you when you get back to Barcelona.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rosanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.